Hi, I'm Liz, and I'm here with Pastor Josh.
Yep.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing great. It's weird to be called Pastor Josh.
I'm so excited. So this weekend was your first weekend teaching here at Gent Road.
Yeah, it
correct?
was. I've taught at some of the other campuses, but yeah, this weekend was my first time kind of the full length at Bath campus.
You know what's crazy is I was thinking when you got up there tonight about how many years ago did you move here to Akron?
4 years ago.
4 years ago. So
Yeah.
I think it was maybe the same week that you had moved in. I happened to be at a park and you showed up with your brother-in-law because you were staying with him.
Yep.
And you showed up and you were like, well, I'm here because I like grace and I want to be a part of whatever God's doing here. And that was I just remember going home being like, oh my gosh, like somebody actually moved here because they're excited about what's going on. And now you're a pastor.
Yeah.
That's how easy it is. Just
Yes,
move
that's
to
all you have
Akron,
to do.
go to seminary, and you too could be preaching here
Yes.
soon.
No,
It
we're
was
really
just-
excited to be here. And I'm
Yeah.
glad that we get to be a part of Grace long term and working with life groups and being on pastoral staff.
Yeah, it was just so exciting. I'm just thankful that I got to see a little bit of that story and watch as you chose to trust God even in the hard times. And that was a little bit about what you talked about tonight. So we're in a series called Love Liable. We're kind of just riding that roller coaster a couple of weeks in. I highly recommend that you go listen to that if you haven't heard the previous sermons, because they have been so good with just lots of practical wisdom of how God says to love well. So tonight we talked about how love always trusts. And that was just like a huge topic. And right away I was like, but really, love always trusts? That's a whole bag,
Yeah.
But you talked about our foundation being God's love. And when we live from that place, who can come against us? Mm-hmm. And I was just very excited about that. But one question I did have for you was you talked about, so in the trial, asking God why. Why did you bring this trial? And you said, we don't want to ask the why. And right away... why not?
You want to ask the why.
I do.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if you could just touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, and I actually hope that's not how it came across, because I actually think it's okay to ask the why question. Mm-hmm. I think more what I hope can be taken away is that we don't get stuck on it. Because I think what happens is the why question is so big and so many people try to answer it that you either get a simplified answer that's not satisfying, or we really just can't understand. I actually think of another person in the Bible whose name was Job, and basically his story is just everything bad that happens in his life.
Guy for, man, rough things
I could have talked about him.
Right.
But when you get to the end of Job's kind of why search, God ends up asking him questions. And really they point back to who God is. Were you there, Job, when I created this, or when this happened? And really for multiple chapters in Job, God asked these questions to him. And you get to the end, and the point was not for Job to answer them or that God had finally explained it all.
Right.
But really to show that God it really is unsearchable. The Romans would also talk about it that way. Mm-hmm. And that if we're looking or even waiting to trust God to be when that why question gets answered, it's not going to. We're not going to actually trust him if we're waiting for it to be satisfied. And I think that's kind of what Job shows us. And I think that it's okay to ask why. It's okay to wrestle with that and feel that kind of grief and that hurt.
I think it's important. Yeah.
Yeah. But I can't sit around kind of waiting for that kind of question to be satisfied. I have to begin to trust him even through all the things that aren't answered. And that's what I hope kind of goes across, because that's what I think my mother-in-law was teaching us in that story I shared just with her battle with cancer, and now she's with the Lord. But I think that's what we were learning, is that even when it doesn't make sense, I'm going to trust anyway. Yeah. I may learn more, like in Joseph's story, about why these things are happening and seeing God's plan, but that's not always how it works out.
Right. I love that idea of trusting God in the middle and wrestling with it honestly.
He can handle it.
Right. Honestly bringing that struggle to him and saying this does not make sense, but I trust in your love. I trust in your unfailing goodness.
Yep.
And I love the example that you gave of your mother-in-law. Do you still have the bracelet on?
Yeah,
you do.
I do.
So
super cool.
In case you hadn't heard it, the story that he gave was that his mother-in-law was going through some chemo, and when she felt like she really had nothing left to give and was just struggling so hard with her health, she chose to pray the three things remind me of
God
them.
sees,
God sees.
God hears, God cares.
Yeah, and I actually wrote those
Super
down because I
simple.
want to take it home and put it up somewhere because we all go through things where it just kind of feels like I can't keep going on. But to know that even in the middle of that pain, I can choose to pray those things is so powerful and will, I think, get us to that depth that you talked about a little bit of like when we go through really hard things, like the growth.
Because that's what's happening here is not that we're just trying to simplify it, but actually that I'm growing deeper in my relationship because I need to trust him more.
Right.
And so it's going to require depth and accepting these truths that I believed at a certain level, and now I have to accept them at a whole nother. Yeah.
Choose to believe them. So, such good stuff. I'm so excited to hear even more from you and see where God's taking you and your wife on this adventure. Yeah. I wanted to wrap us up just with you talked in Romans 8 tonight. Yeah. Just go read Romans 8 every day for the rest of 2019. It will make your life better. But there's a passage in Romans 8. It's 8:26. I'm just going to read it real quickly to wrap this up. Meanwhile, the moment we get tired in the waiting, God's Spirit is right alongside us, helping us along. If we don't know how or what to pray, it doesn't matter. He does our praying in and for us, making prayer out of our wordless sighs and our aching groans. He knows us far better than we know ourselves. And I just would challenge people that are listening to this, if you are going through grief and through a hard time in your life where you feel like asking that why to God sees, God hears, God knows in the middle of this, and choose to trust him, because the grace that will be met with you in that is there's a richness and a depth that is beautiful. Well, that was so good. This has been a good conversation, a heavy one, right?
Yeah.
But definitely worthwhile having, and I'm just so grateful we got to have it. Mm-hmm. So without further ado, Pastor Josh and Liz here wishing you have a great week.